It is 4:06 p.m. right now as I'm starting this recording, and it is also Friday, so I actually have to work tomorrow. And I was like so engrossed in some other things this week that I was like, oh shit, it is Friday. I need to record. Oh no. So I already have today's topic for this week's episode of the podcast because it's the reason why this is getting recorded so late and probably not going to get edited. So this is probably just going to be uploaded raw, fillers and all. So without further ado, welcome to this week's episode of Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and today we are going to be talking about hyperfixations and special interests. So, what are hyperfixations and what are special interests? So, hyperfixations are basically more of an ADHD thing. It also occurs in autism as well, but it's more so very common in ADHD because you become very fixated on something to the point where you're kind of like obsessed with it. But then like after some time has passed, you get really bored of it and you go, oh, okay, well, that was fun, but I don't really feel like doing it anymore. And sometimes you might not touch that specific interest, topic, whatever have you, until you get that sudden spark again months or even years down the road. And you're like, oh, I remember when I did that. I'm going to give that a shot again. And then you just kind of fall right out of it again. Whereas with special interests are something that are more exclusive to autism. And basically, it's like a hyperfixation, except for it becomes lifelong. And you never get bored of it, like ever. Like, for example, one of my hyperfixations is Pokemon. I'm going to be 33 in about a month and a half. And I still play Pokemon to this day. Even if people don't think the games are good, or even if I don't think the games are good, I'll still buy a Pokemon game. I'll still play it. Like I'm going to play Pokemon Legends ZA when it comes out. So I've always enjoyed Pokemon. Another thing that I've enjoyed that I recently picked up within the last few years was metaphysics. Hence why the title of the podcast is Divergence and Divine, because I also like talking about the metaphysical aspect of things and spiritual side of things. And I also like to try to help people that are ADHD and things that have helped me and things that I've noticed, and just kind of use this as a way to vent like my life experiences. Because who knows, maybe there is something that you relate to, or maybe there is something that I've done that you've done as well, where you're like, oh, okay, so I'm not weird. I'm just neurodivergent, so that's normal. But, I mean, I can think of maybe at least a few things that I kind of really enjoy. And most of the time, for me, it's either doing something or a specific gaming franchise or just it could be anything really. And for me, there's Pokemon, there's metaphysics. My other thing is I love to go on walks. So like, I love going to like forest preserves and state parks and just walking down trails. I mean, I'm not a fan of wasps and ticks and other insects that can either harm you or make you sick because of, diseases that they carry. And also I'm mildly allergic to mosquito bites. Apparently I'm allergic to mosquito saliva. So that's interesting. But I still like to walk outside anyway in nature. So it's just kind of one of those things that even though there are some things that I don't like about it, it's still not enough for me to not do it anyway, if that makes sense. So for me, it's one of the best things about it is that like a special interest is also very calming and very grounding for anxiety. So I love playing Pokemon. I love going for walks. I love just meditating and reading up on, metaphysics and things like that. I also, right now, I there's another, I would say it's somewhere between a hyperfixation and a special interest, but another game that I've been playing is Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, and my alliance that I'm a part of, we have a Discord server, and some of us in there, we're just there to chill, hang out and stuff, and some members of the alliance have like their main, like their characters, right? Like they have like their main account, and then they have like their alternate accounts, like their main character and their alternate characters. But they all have some form of lore in them, and they've written like, backgrounds, looked at the heights and converted the heights into feet and inches if, they live in the US, and then otherwise they just leave the centimeter height the same. And then they kind of just guess the weight based on the build of the model. Like, oh, this person, my character looks like they weigh about this much. And then they give them like a backstory, like, oh, so-and-so was a member of, this organization, or they were just, existing on Earth, and then all of a sudden they got pulled to the world of Halpha for whatever reason, explanation in the lore. And then they make like a Google document, and it's just like little lores for like their main character and their alternate characters, because you can have up to 3 characters per account on NGS. So it kind of inspired me to actually make lore for my main character. And it's very interesting because I have a main character that originally I had made that looked nearly identical to the lady from my last job that hurt me, because I kind of didn't know how to deal with trauma at the time. So I thought maybe just being like, this is how I envision this person, and maybe this will kind of help. And then as I've gone through therapy and worked on that, I've kind of started tweaking the way that my main character looks. So now it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, now she doesn't look as much like that lady anymore. She kind of looks like her own unique character, just with certain features of, that lady. And then I got inspired to start writing lore, and then I decided to finally make an alternate character that I don't really use, which, newsflash, the alternate character is literally just me. And my lore is, I was meditating, and somehow I had some sort of spiritual awakening, and I somehow opened some sort of dimensional universal rift and ended up in the world of Halpha. And that's my lore. Like, there's nothing special, nothing crazy. Just I hit like just complete wholeness in my metaphysics training, and then I did that. Ta-da! The end. But it basically gave me an idea of how like, now that it's like this character is completely different, it gave me an idea of, well, I've made all these lores using like some of the different costumes and like accessories that you can get in PSO2 NGS, made some different outfits, and then for both myself and my main character that I play on. And it's like, I decided to write a book, and I'm like, originally the book that I was going to write was going to be a self-help book, but I didn't know how to go about doing it. And the podcast is basically the self-help book, because trying to write it all down and having to, proofread it and doing all this stuff, I didn't know how to go about doing it after I got past like writing the first, few pages of, the special dedication page and, appreciation page, and like this is, and like the very like, like not like a prologue, but like just kind of like, this book is dedicated to, autistic level 1 people, ADHD, autistic ADHDers, and, that whole little disclaimer, and then opening it up with 2 pages of chapter 1, and then that was it. Like, I couldn't figure out how to write it or where to go from there, what chapter should cover what. And then that was when I got the idea to do the podcast, like a year later after coming up with the idea. And this is so much easier because now if I ever wanted to write a self-help book, I can just go back and listen to all of these and be like, yeah, each one of these would be perfect. And then if I ever swing back to a topic, then I can just look at the one episode where I covered the topic the first time and then cover the topic the second time and then put that into one chapter. But that was kind of not something that I had originally thought of, was voice notes and just like a vocal diary and just writing it and just like speaking it out. And now that's kind of what this podcast has become. So it's kind of nice. So now I can focus on writing. And I feel like with writing, my mind is so creative that, like, growing up, I was like really into cartoons and anime because, very silly, wacky adventures. And then anime is like cartoons, but more serious. And there's more internal monologuing. So you kind of know what characters, especially the main protagonists, typically are thinking. And like for me, I can just visualize like animations. I can even visualize, things like as if they were real in my mind. Can't draw it for crap, but I can imagine it. So I'm just so good at like writing little scenarios like that I'm like, I could just write a whole freaking book just using the basis of the lore that I made for my NGS character from Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. And then I can just incorporate myself into the story somehow, not necessarily as me, but like it's based off of me. So like just changing my character's name, which is not WIllspiration, but it's very similar. So I figured just ditch the whole like WIllspiration-esque name entirely and just make it rename myself a completely different name. And it'll just be like, it'll be me without actually being me. Cause I feel like it's kind of very self-centered and very like, inject, cameo character that's of the author here kind of feeling. And I don't want to do that. I feel like that's a little conceited to do. So I just figure, use myself as a basis, rename myself, maybe change up a few of my physical features just to kind of differentiate it, but use myself as like the base of the character. And like, I'm so excited because I'm so happy that I kind of decided to go down that route because I kind of forgot how creative I can be. But I'm still ironing out how I want to do that. But it's in the works. I'm laying out the chapters, kind of like giving myself some, key points to hit in each chapter. Like, what trials are going to be in there? Like, kind of like if you were to make it a video game, like what would the mid boss of that specific act or chapter be? What would the boss of that chapter be? That kind of thing. So like, what are the key points? Like, what challenges are they going to face in this chapter? And when they get past it, what is going to open up and what is going to be waiting for them in the next chapter? And kind of just do it like that, where it kind of feels very like, it kind of feels like each chapter is an arc in like a manga or in an anime, where it's just like, once this whole specific situation is done, now a new situation arises, aka a new arc starts. So what's going to be in store for them in this arc, in these next chapters, or couple chapters, or even just in a single chapter? And it just makes me happy. So this right there, where I've just gone on for like probably almost like 5 minutes of just talking about this book and my characters from Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, that's an example of like a hyperfixation and a special interest. Because a hyperfixation, you learn everything about that specific interest that you're hyperfixating on, but then you kind of just fall out of it. Whereas like with special interests, you kind of, when you learn it, you commit it to memory. So it's like, for example, I may not be able to name all 1025 Pokemon off at the top of my head, but I can at least name several hundred. And at least half of them, I can tell you they're typing right on the spot. And I can tell you if they have a pre-evolution, or if they have an evolution, or if they just like are fully evolved, or they're just like a single stage Pokemon. And meanwhile, I could, a hyperfixation would be like me with drawing. There's times where I get really in the mood to draw, and then I always forget I'm terrible at drawing. And then the ADHD kicks in, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. But then I'd have to spend like a year practicing, and do I really want to set aside like half an hour to an hour a day when I could just be writing and, doing other things? So that's kind of more of a hyperfixation where I'm like, oh, I'm going to draw. Oh yeah, I kind of suck at drawing. You know what? I'm going to try to draw a little bit better. I'm going to try to work on my drawing. And after like 2 weeks, I go, you know what? Fuck this. I don't feel like doing this anymore. And then I don't have the urge or even think about drawing for like months or even years on end until something else decides to spark my interest. And I go, I want to do that. And then I try to draw again. There was actually one time where I bought a drawing tablet. It was a cheap one. It was like the cheapest one I could find. It was like $600, but it was on sale for like, I think it was like $450. And it was like on the cheaper end, but it's typically what a lot of like digital artists would start using. And I didn't even use it for like more than like a month. And then I just never touched it again. And then I ended up getting rid of it. So yeah, so that's an example. That's another thing that's common in hyperfixations too, is like you are willing to spend and blow all the money that you need to do this hyperfixation, and then you don't do it. Or like you do it and then you get bored of it, and then you just kind of decide it's not for you, and then you just kind of abandon it. And now you've wasted, whether it's like $100 or you wasted like $1,000 to do something, and then you don't do it. And I remember this was kind of the thing that like my parents were worried about, was me getting this, $400 mic, this $100 preamp to boost the mic, and then this rinky-dink little audio interface that was like $120. So like combined, it was like damn near $700 of equipment if I wasn't going to use it. And I use it all the time. Obviously, I've been doing this podcast. I know in the previous episode I put on the title card that it was 27, but it was actually episode 26. This episode right now is 27. So if that is confusing, that's why. So apologies. I wasn't even thinking about it until I saw it earlier today when I was like, wait, which episode am I on today? And I was like, oh, right. I should probably fix that, but nah, it's fine. But yeah. So back to what I was saying. I basically have been doing this for 27 weeks. That's almost, if not slightly over half a year. And that's crazy to think about. Actually, it has been half a year because I started in November. Almost 8 months now. Or 7 months. Almost 7 months now. So, and I do it once a week, and sometimes I even, I might make an occasional video randomly through the week about something, or even just be in voice call with some of the people in my alliance from, PSO2 New Genesis, and just be in the Discord server talking to people in voice chat. So I'm getting my use out of my mic, that's for sure. So none of this was wasted. And it was put to good use. So this is slowly kind of becoming more of a special interest, because it's also kind of therapeutic, because it's like I also get to get my thoughts out there. So it's like I don't have to hold everything in, and sometimes journaling just doesn't work. It's like, yeah, you get what on your mind out, but it doesn't necessarily do anything, I guess, to put it simply. Like it doesn't make me feel better. Like it's just reading it. It's just like, oh yeah, I remember when I felt like that. And now I feel like that again reading this. And it just, if it's something that makes me mad, I'll forget about it at some point, go back through a journal, see that and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. Now I'm mad. Or now I'm depressed. Or, if it's not like a happy memory, I don't typically journal it because it's just like, I'm going to look at it and go, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I'll just remember how it made me feel. And then I'll either be bummed out or pissed off the rest of the day. So I'm like, yeah, that's not really worth it. So if it's not happy, I don't journal it down just because I'm like, I don't want to ruin my mood. But at the same time, it's also a good way to show that, like, yeah, it still bothers you, but hey, you moved on from it. You didn't necessarily let it go, but it doesn't control you anymore, so that's good. But I mean, to each their own. For some people, they could just be like, I feel better now that I got it out on a piece of paper. And that's great. If that works for you, that's awesome. But it also doesn't work for everybody. So that's kind of why I always like to bring that up. That, like, give it a try. If it worked for you, then great. But it may not work for you. And in which case, you just kind of keep looking for different coping skills and grounding techniques. That's what I always say. But yeah, so that was so all of that was the reason why this episode is going up so late, specifically because I discovered that I found some of the assets from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and I was like, oh, I can make some cool stuff, because I've been recently seeing where, like, PokeTubers have been talking about, like, oh, these are some of the good Pokemon in competitive, right? And they make their own little, like, move cards or ability cards. And I saw one where one looked very similar to the Scarlet and Violet style, but obviously was more of a mock-up. And then I got the genius idea to hunt down a screenshot from one of the games, and then I copied it. Like, well, not copied, but, like, I cropped it out. And then I cropped out the move list. So I cropped out the first 3 moves on the list. And then I shrunk it down a little bit and cropped it. And then I noticed how pixelated it looks. So then I isolated the lines, and then I inverted it so I could color in the dark blue box. And then after that, then I recolored the lines. And then from there, I was able to actually found one of the 2 texts from the game that they use, which is actually royalty free. And then the other one is not necessarily royalty free, but you can find it on a bunch of font sizes, like the font sites. And you can also find it, like, if you sign up for, like, an Adobe subscription. Adobe also has, like, a font library that if you sign up, I think it's like $10 a month. You can also find that those fonts used in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in there as well. But then I came across a modding forum where they're like, oh yeah, one of these you can only get by signing up for subscriptions on font sites. But, when I was going through the game files to mod my games, I just extracted that text file. So, like, if you guys want to download it, it's right here. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. So I got those fonts. So now it looks official. And then people confirm that the type icons that are on Bulbapedia were actually extracted directly from the game files. So I didn't have to, like, do any modding or anything. All that stuff is online. So now I kind of just make these. The only thing that was different is that I had to make the borders for the ability card and the move card. But otherwise, it pretty much looked exactly like how it did in the game. And then I took, like, I saved the original cropped image, and I just overlaid it so that I could put the icons and the text in there, and it was pretty much almost a pixel perfect match. As far as the ability card goes, that one, I basically, when I looked at it, I was like, I kind of don't like that it's just, like, there, and it just says the ability, and then, like, underneath it is, like, the text, but there's, like, no separation. So I just took the little move card that I made, and I just erased the 2 little lines on the bottom, and then shrunk it down a little bit, And I said, all right, I'm just going to use this. That way there's a separation. And then I looked at how in the in-game battle, it says, the word ability is yellow. And then, there's no like semicolons or anything. And then it's like more centered to where it's at from the remainder of the space that's remaining. And then that's where the ability name is. And then underneath the line is where the ability description goes. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then I ended up finding that someone ripped the stat chart from the game. So like the little hexagon in there. And then I was like, ooh, I could use that. So then I can just like, if I ever decide to make fake mon, I can, fill in the little hexagon with like, the stat numbers. And then I took that and then I went into Photoshop Elements 22 and, added like the text. And then I made the text the same colors as the text, as the bars that they use in Bulbapedia for the stats, which were actually used and color coordinated to the same color of the appropriate stats of the text for those stats from X and Y, Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, where each stat had a text color. So like HP was green, attack was yellow, defense was orange, speed was pink, special defense was indigo, and then special attack was a light blue. So then I did that, and then I added a 1 point stroke around the outside of it, so it has a little outline. And then I did the same thing with like the number area where like it would display like the stat number for the stats, which I made for myself. And I basically spent the whole week doing that. And that was pretty cool. So, and then I started making like fake mon dex entries. And I'm like, now I kind of want to draw again. But like, basically just from hearing myself talk and looking at the timer again, that's another hyperfixation of mine right now. And right now it's just a hyperfixation, but it may become a special interest at some point. Maybe I decide to, I make a second channel and it's like a PokeTuber channel and I become, a fake mon artist. This might be the push that I need to make drawing a special interest of mine. Who knows? Or maybe this will just be another hyperfixation and I got all this stuff made and it's just going to sit there collecting dust and I'm not going to touch it until something sparks my interest again. You never know. So I just think that that's like the most interesting part about hyperfixations and special interest is that like, when you found a special interest because like you can step away from it and pick it up like you never left, or like it's something that you do on a daily basis or like every other day. And then there's hyperfixations that kind of just, they come and they go. They're very intense and feel like they're special interests, but then you just kind of get bored of them, or like something just kind of kills the drive that you have and you kind of just go, I don't feel like doing it anymore. And then you just like forget all about it for like months or even years on end. And I think it's so interesting, the duality of it, because there's a couple things that I know for me were like hyperfixations and I'm like, oh, okay, that was fun. And then they would come back more frequently and more frequently. And then all of a sudden it was just a special interest at that point. And I'm like, wow, like I've gotten pretty good at doing this. So I don't know. I think being neurodivergent is probably one of the most interesting things about life, is just not being the same as everybody else and just kind of feeling the more extremes of stuff, like, the sensory issues, just the difference in the thought process and just, really, I guess, just not being normal. I feel like being neurodivergent makes me more unique because I'm not trying, at least at this point in my life now, I'm not trying to be someone that I'm not. I'm just me. And people are just, like, people can look at me weird all they want, but I like the fact that I don't really have to mask anymore unless it's at work for, professionalism. But I just like that I can be myself. And it's like, it makes me realize too, from just like the metaphysical standpoint of things, that like people that are often jealous of others that are unique, true, and authentic to themselves are the people that either don't know who they truly are or are still afraid to be themselves. And it's kind of one of the most empowering feelings being yourself, because you know that there's nobody out there that's like you. You know that you are the only person. And yeah, there might be people that think similarly to you or have similar interests or have the same interests, whether it's more intense or less intense. But at the end of the day, they aren't you, if that makes sense. Like, they're not, you are you, they are them, but neither one of you are the same person. And I feel like the more like neurodivergents realize that, the more like it's better for them. But it would also help if neurotypicals would stop trying to be like each other, because the whole unwritten rule of society bullshit is, I feel like, what kills a lot of individuality in neurotypicals. And we in the neurodivergent community, we don't have that issue because of the fact that we all accept that we're all different. We're already different than neurotypicals as it is. So we might as well embrace our differences. And I feel like that's why a lot of us get along a lot more, because no two neurodivergent people are the same. No two autistic people are the same. No two ADHD people are the same. No two ADHD people are the same. But every neurotypical, even though, yeah, they're unique, you know, every human is uniquely their own person. No two humans are the same, neurodivergent or not. The difference is that the unwritten rules of society for neurotypicals have to be followed. Whereas like for us neurodivergents, we don't understand it as well. So we just kind of say, you know, well, fuck you and your rules. We're just going to, you know, do things our way. And I feel like that's the biggest takeaway, is that like if neurotypicals need to learn anything from like us autistic and ADHD people, is stop being who you're not and be who you truly are. Because I feel like that would help so much, because then you don't have people trying to, you know, people please. People don't feel like they need to appease everybody just to get recognition and feel accepted and feel loved, when if you're just you and you be true to yourself, 100% authentic, and it helps weed out like the good people and the bad people, and you meet people on your journey that are meant to be with you, and you make really close friends, and you know, it just makes life better, because then you're not, you know, losing friends or going in and out of relationships because you're just jumping into relationships because you're like, oh, I think this person's attractive. Or, you know, you want to be friends with someone because you think you want to be friends with them, but really there's a specific reason. Like maybe they have access to something that you can't get, and by being friends with them, you can get access to that thing. Whereas like if you're a neurodivergent, when a neurodivergent is your friend, they are your friend so like when, for example, when I say to someone that they are my friend, I literally mean they are my friend. Like I'm not bullshitting them when I say that. And neurotypicals will kind of look at me and just be like, you know, they'll agree, but they're also kind of hesitant, because it's just like, who just comes out and says that with like zero hesitation and just so pure and honest, without there being like a stipulation or some sort of, you know, like string attached to it. And it really throws people off, because it's like, there's one thing that I've noticed is that it's neurotypicals like to use each other as well for specific things. Whereas like neurodivergent people, we are just genuinely friends with each other. Like no ands, ifs, or buts. We don't typically, I guess I shouldn't say all neurodivergents, but a vast majority of neurodivergents are, when they say they're friends with someone, they mean it and are friends with each other. It seems, at least from my understanding and what I've seen so far as a neurodivergent, it's very rare to see neurodivergents take advantage of each other or of other people in general. So that's more of a common neurotypical thing. But that's why, for me, if I get along well with someone, it's either that they're neurodivergent or they're just a very, very chill and understanding neurotypical person. So that's why my circle is always so small. Like, if you saw my friends book list is literally only 95 people right now. And then you see other people that have, like, the average that I've seen on my friend list across the 95 people that I've had added is anywhere from like 175 to like 350 friends on average. There's some people that have over 1,000 friends. There's some people, I got one person on there that has maxed out their friends list at 5,000. It's like, I get that 5,000 people, but like, how many of those people do you actually talk to? Because I doubt you talk to all 5,000 of them. So, anyway, that's pretty much this week's episode of the podcast. I'm going to wrap it up here because it's already at 36 minutes. I know that was kind of a bit of an abrupt ending, but I do at least want to edit the quality of the audio a little bit and make it a little more listenable, I guess, if that's even a word. Make it a little more enjoyable so it's not like complete raw audio. Boost my voice up a little bit, get rid of all the breathiness like I usually do, but I'm going to probably just leave all the fillers in. So in terms of that, it'll just be completely raw, but the audio will be edited and it'll sound less breathy. But with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. And if you guys did, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell because that'll tell you when I upload a new episode of the podcast. And with that, I'm going to try to get this edited within like 20 minutes. And hopefully I can have this up by like 5:30, 6 o'clock. So with that, I will see you guys next week. And I hope you guys have a good weekend and a good start to your next week. Bye-bye.